Story time about how I found out I was born from incest. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. Send me on Instagram. Growing up, I always wondered why we didn't have a family. I mean, I had both my parents, but we never visited my grandparents, cousins, parents until I turned 15. That's when I started getting curious and I started asking questions. Finally, I asked my parents about my grandparents. I remember meeting them when I was a kid. That's when my dad got really upset. He told me to stop asking questions because we didn't need family. I immediately went onto Facebook. It wasn't hard to find my aunt, my mom's sister. I messaged her and she told me something disturbing. She said my mom and dad were related. They were half brother and sister. Part 2 is up. Story time about how I found out I was born out of incest. Disclaimer, is not my story time. It's me on Instagram. When my aunt told me the disturbing truth. My mom and dad were half brother and sister. According to my aunt, when they were in high school, they always spent time together. Everyone just thought they were best friends. But apparently my aunt walked in on them making out one day. When she told her parents, my grandparents, they obviously freaked out and tried to separate them. That's when they tried to send my dad to a military school. 1 week before they sent him, my mom and dad decided to run away together. They finally ran away and never spoke to their family again until I was born. My grandmother begged them to get rid of me. My parents kept me. Part 3 is up. Story time about how I found out I was born out of incest. Disclaimer, is not my story time. It's on Instagram. After I was born, my grandmother begged my mom to give me up for adoption. My parents were both 18 when they had me. Not only were they jobless, they were also half brother and sister. Since my parents had run away from home, my grandparents didn't want to help them financially. Luckily, my parents started their own business and they are successful today. Finding out that my parents are half brother and sister, I understand our family history and why we were never close to our family. Finally confronted my parents and they denied everything. I decided I'd do the same thing they did. I ran away for 3 nights, hid in my bestie's basement. Finally, my parents came over and told me the entire truth. My parents do love me, but they keep me away from my family. What should I do? Should I forgive them?
Story time about how my aunt drugged me. So a little background information, I was 16 and in 10th grade. And I had never met my aunt before, but whenever my parents talked about her, it was only bad things. Well, the one day I went to go and ask my mom something and I heard her on the phone with someone. She was like, "No, I'm not giving you any more money. It's not my fault if you spent it all on drugs." And we barely talked about my aunt, so I didn't know that's who she was talking to. Fast forward, I come home from school the one day and my dad's sitting on the porch with this woman who looks like she's homeless. My dad introduces her. He's like, "Oh, by the way, this is your aunt." He was like, "Oh, well, she wants to spend some time with you, so you're gonna go with her for a few hours." I was hesitant because of all of the stuff that my mom had told me about her, but I started walking down to her car and my mom whips in the driveway. Eventually, my aunt ends up talking my mom into letting me see her, and apparently my aunt has been asking to see me for a very long time. So she takes me to the mall, we eat, we get our nails done, and at this point, I'm thinking she's kind of normal until she takes me to her house. Like for part 2. Part 2 about my aunt who drugged me. So like I said, she ended up talking my mom into letting me go with her, which I was super grossed out because she smelled really bad and her car was a mess, but she took me to the mall. I thought she was normal. And then she took me to her house. When we got into the neighborhood, I kind of recognized it because my grandma lived in the same neighborhood. But anyways, we pull up and it is literally trashed. Like, there's fucking garbage all outside of the house. And I walked inside thinking that it would be better. No, it was filthy. There were needles everywhere. You could definitely tell that druggies lived there. And they had weird pictures hanging up all over the walls of these girls, random girls. Like when I asked who they were like, "Oh, I don't know." So then her boyfriend's walking around the house. He's like 40 years old, walking around in his boxers around me. So I call my mom, I go outside and I'm waiting for her. And my aunt comes out and she's like, "Do you want a glass of water?" She gave me some water and it tasted really sour and I had chugged the whole thing. And that was the last thing I remember before I woke up on her couch in the morning. Like for part 3. Part 3 about my aunt who drugged me. So like I said, I was sitting outside on the stairs waiting for my mom and she comes over to me and asks me if I want a drink and I'm like, sure. So I chugged the water and it tasted sour, woke up in the morning on her couch. And when I woke up, my aunt was in the middle of doing drugs. And some random lady who I don't even know how she got there, she asked me if I wanted a cigarette or if I wanted any of the drugs. So I got up, I was like, "No, I don't do drugs." And I ran out of the house and I was like super dizzy when I got up. So I ate shit on the way out of the house. I ran outside, I ran into this lady, I asked her to use her phone. I told her a little bit of what happened. After I ran towards my grandma's house and my mom came and picked me up and I got grounded for 3 months because my aunt drugged me and my mom let me go with my aunt.
Story time about how my boyfriend's best friend kissed me. Should I tell him? His best friend is a girl. Disclaimer, is not my story time. It's not on Instagram. My boyfriend and I have only been dating for 2 weeks. 2 weeks. We actually met a couple of months ago on a dating app. We went on several dates over the course of 4 months, and after that he asked me to be his girlfriend. I said yes. While we were dating, I met a couple of his friends, one of them being his girl best friend, and she is bi, which I did know of. Okay, but here's the messed up thing. The day I met this girl, she was staring at me. Not just like staring at me a little bit, hardcore staring. She even told my boyfriend that I was so attractive that he needed to take care of me because she could snatch me up. And she said this in front of me. My boyfriend thought it was hilarious and just laughed at her. And to be honest with you, even though yes, she's a girl, she made me feel extremely uncomfortable. She would always compliment my body in front of everybody. She would comment on how my boobs are so big. We all went to the beach one time, and she said, I quote, "If your bikini top pops off, I don't mind, girl." I did not laugh. She even went up behind me and tried to untie my bikini. My boyfriend thought it was so funny. Part 2 is story time about how my boyfriend's best friend kissed me. Should I tell him? And she's a girl. Disclaimer is not my story time. It's on me on Instagram. When she tried to untie my bikini top, I got really upset. I yelled at her, but my boyfriend thought it was funny. When my boyfriend and I got back to his apartment, I told him that his best friend made me really uncomfortable. And he said, "You're being so stupid. She's just a girl." I said that didn't matter because she always made comments about my physical appearance and how she was going to steal me from him. He promised he would talk to her and tell her to lay off. But this did the exact opposite. The next day, I get a DM from her saying, "So I heard I make you feel uncomfortable?" I didn't respond to that, and I showed it to my boyfriend. My boyfriend just said, "Don't worry about it, just ignore her." Then she sent another message saying, "I'm sorry if I intimidate you." I was so upset that I replied saying, "You definitely don't intimidate me. You constantly objectify me, and that's completely unacceptable." Then she sent me a poop emoji. And that was it. The next time I saw her, I purposely did not even look her way. This was at a party, and there were tons of people. But she managed to follow me around the whole night and asked me why I wasn't talking to her. Finally, she grabbed me and kissed me. Part 3 is story time about how my boyfriend's best friend kissed me. Should I tell him? And she's a girl. Disclaimer is not my story time. It's on me on Instagram. During the party, she just kept following me around. She would ask me over and over why I wasn't talking to her, but of course I just kept ignoring her. I finally went over to the kitchen to grab a drink, and that's when she grabbed me, turns me around, and just puts her face on mine. She stuck her tongue all the way down my throat. It was disgusting. And she had a really strong hold on me, so I couldn't push her off right away. To tell you that we struggled is an understatement. And I finally got her off of my face after like 30 seconds. I pushed her so hard she fell backwards. And I ran straight to my boyfriend and told him what happened. Thankfully, he was really upset with her and went straight to talk to her. Honestly, part of me thought that he was just going to take her side. We both went to the kitchen and he asked her what her problem was. That's when she told my boyfriend that she was convinced that I liked her, and that for some reason I was just denying it because I wanted to play hard. By the way, she did have a few drinks, so I guess it could be that. I told her that she was actually hallucinating and that I did not have feelings for her. I also told her not to ever touch me again. My boyfriend told her not to come around anymore, but it doesn't stop there. He actually tried to kiss me again later on. Part 4 is up. Story time about how my boyfriend's best friend kissed me. Should I tell him? And she's a girl. Disclaimer is not my story time. It's not even on Instagram. She promised she wouldn't try to kiss me again, but she lied. Just a few days later, my boyfriend had forgiven her. She made up a whole story to him that she was depressed about another girl and that somehow I reminded her of the other girl. Then my boyfriend said, "Do you mind if she comes over?" And I told him as long as she didn't try to touch me, everything would be fine. This time I was going to defend myself. Do you see where this is going? A few of my boyfriend's friends showed up, and then she showed up last. And as soon as she saw me, she came over and tried to hug me. I told her hugging was not necessary for an apology, that her words were fine. She then apologizes. Not 2 hours later, while everyone is in the backyard, I go to the kitchen. And she follows me again. This time she kissed me, but it was much quicker and I didn't have to push her off. Then she said, "What, are you gonna run and tell your boyfriend again?" Instead, I smacked her. Really, really hard. So hard, you could see my palm print on her face. Then she apologized and begged me not to tell my boyfriend. He's afraid of losing his friendship. And I actually did feel bad for her for a second, but I'm not sure anymore. Should I tell my boyfriend or should I keep this to myself? Bye.
Story time about how my sister was hooking up with my boyfriend. Little background information, I was 15 and in 10th grade, and I have never had a boyfriend before. Any guy that I was sort of talking to, we never made it out of the talking stage. But fast forward, I met this one guy who we're gonna call Jake, and because of how tragic my love life was, I didn't expect us to get into a relationship, but he ended up asking me to be his girlfriend. So of course I said yes. I was super excited that I had a boyfriend, and then he met my family. And my older sister and I were like super close, so I told her all about him, and she just couldn't wait to meet him. Real quick, I just want to give a big shout out to Lumino for sponsoring today's video. Lumino Whitening Kit is one of the best ways to whiten your teeth without paying hundreds of dollars, especially if you have sensitive teeth. This is the next best thing. Although I have veneers, they only cover the front of my teeth, so my teeth can still be very sensitive to certain chemicals that other brands use in their products. If you guys want to go check out their 7-pack for under $15, the link is in my bio. So whenever he met my sister, she was being super talkative to him, and I thought it was just because she was excited to meet him, like for part 2. Part 2 about how I found out my sister was hooking up with my boyfriend. So like I said, he came over, he met my sister, they got along super well. Fast forward, my parents decided to have a family gathering and my sister was like begging me to invite my boyfriend, which I didn't plan on inviting him at all because my family is super annoying and would make a big deal about the fact that this is my first boyfriend. She was like, okay, but if you guys are seriously in a relationship, I think that he should meet your family. So I ended up inviting him. So my mom called me to the kitchen to help pass out drinks, which was super annoying because my sister was literally doing fucking nothing. So after I'm done with that, I'm looking for my boyfriend and he's nowhere to be found. So I go upstairs and as I'm about to walk up the stairs, both of them come down. And when I asked what was wrong, like why they were upstairs together, she was like, oh, I was showing him to the bathroom, which I felt super weird about, but because she was my sister, I let it go because you're supposed to trust your family. Stuff started. Part 3 about how my sister got with my boyfriend. So things started to get really sus because every time that he would come over, they would always find a way to be alone with each other. So fast forward, my sister and I are supposed to go to one of her friends' parties. The whole time though, she kept asking me if I would invite my boyfriend. And no offense, I love my boyfriend, but I need space away from him sometimes. And not to mention, I felt like I was dragging him around like a dog because she was the one who would want me to invite him everywhere. Fast forward, I end up inviting him to the party. My sister gets super drunk, really sick, and my boyfriend offers to take her to the bathroom. And I was like, excuse me, I'm her sister. I can do that. Thank you very much. So after I say that, my sister looks at me and she was like, I would appreciate it if you would just stop being like this because I feel super sick right now. Like, okay, play the victim. Anyway, so I go to check on them in the bathroom. They're not in there. And one of the bedroom doors was open. So when I went in there, I saw them doing the nasty. I asked her how long this had been going on and she said it was since the first time that they met. And now I'm ignoring my sister until she goes to college.
Storytime about how my husband makes me pay for everything and still controls all of my money while he's totally unemployed and broke. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. Send me on Instagram. My husband and I have been married for 6 years. 2 of those years we were separated and we recently got back together last year. He lost his job during COVID, so when we got back together, he didn't have a lot of money. Obviously, I didn't really mind. I was just happy we were getting back together. And if you're wondering why we separated, it's because he got really jealous and controlling of everything I ever did. When we got back together, I told him that he needed to change that. And I really could see a change in him this time around. The only problem was that he refused to get a job. I have a really good salary. I make about $80,000 a month. Theoretically, I could totally support him. When I asked him why he didn't want to get a job, he told me that it just wasn't for him. And he also told me that he wanted some time off and he just wanted to travel. Well, this is when things start to get complicated. When we got back together, he was living with his parents, so he ended up moving into my very nice apartment. I live in a really beautiful high-rise. I have a doorman, a gym, indoor pool, and then he moved in with all of his junk. I had to start paying for everything. Anytime he wanted to go to dinner or order food or buy groceries, I was the one footing the bill. He even uses my Amazon account to order whatever he wants. While he was at home playing video games, I was in my office working my ass off. But things get worse. Part 2 is up. Storytime about how my husband controlled all my money while he's unemployed and totally broke. Disclaimers is not my story time. Send me on Instagram. After 3 months of me paying for everything and him using my Amazon account to buy whatever he wanted, including gaming consoles, this man had the audacity to tell me that I was spending too much money on my designer bags. Yeah, you heard that right. One day I decided to treat myself for my birthday by getting myself a Chanel bag. As soon as he saw the new purchase, he started acting like I was addicted to shopping. And then he starts bringing up all these other things. How I like going to Starbucks, how I like going to the nail salon, and that's when I realized it. He had access to my bank account. He could see all of the transactions that I was making. And of course he could. I was in my office all day while he had access to my laptop at home. And of course it didn't occur to me to change my passwords. I was actually really shocked when he started bringing all of this up. Then he suggested that I should let him manage my money. And at first I just went with it. Said okay, and that's when he literally took my credit card from me. Then he started moving money around my accounts and started buying crypto. After 2 months of that, I was done. I asked him to give me my credit card back, which he did. He started guilting me into feeling like I shouldn't go to the nail salon and do these little small things that make me feel good about myself. He was brainwashing me. A few weeks later, it was time for me to upgrade my car. So I decided to get a Tesla. And when I told him, he got so angry. I could see in his face that he was so envious. He spent 2 hours trying to talk me out of getting the stupid Tesla. But the very next day, I went straight to the Tesla store and bought my car. When I finally got the car, he started driving it all over town before I drove it. Part 3 is up. Story time about how my husband controls all my money while he's totally broke and unemployed. Disclaimer, is not my story time, it's sending me on Instagram. After he started driving my brand new Tesla before I did, I started getting really snippy with him. I was always angry and in a bad mood. That's when he started getting even more controlling and this time jealous again. He started to suspect that I was cheating on him. He started showing up to my office to just check on me. By the way, I'm totally aware that if I leave him, he has no money. So of course he's gonna be totally controlling of me. Unfortunately, this is when we started getting into really big fights. I reproached him for everything. Him controlling all of my money and literally telling me what I could or could not buy. And I finally mustered up the courage to ask him to get a job again. And I told him that if he didn't get a job to start paying for half of the bills and everything else, that I would simply file for divorce. He started to cry and he threw a tantrum, but eventually he said yes. Do you think that he moved a muscle to go get a job? No, he didn't. So I took it upon myself to see if my company was hiring. And they did. So now he's got a really good job because of me. I revoked all his access to my accounts and I have full control of all the crypto. Now I give him a weekly allowance. Cannot wait until he starts getting paid. My parents think I should get a divorce, but I'm not sure. What should I do?
Story time about how my grandma almost got me grounded. So a little background information, I was 14 and in 8th grade, and there was this boy that I really liked who lived like 10 minutes away from me. So the one night he asked me if I wanted to hang out, and my mom was strict about me not hanging out with people after 7 o'clock at night, especially a boy. I wasn't even allowed to hang out with boys. And my grandma, my mom, and my brother and I all lived together, and we all had our own rooms. Mine was on the first floor of the house, so I snuck out the window and I went and hung out with him. So I snuck out at around 3 and came back at around 4 a.m. And my grandma comes into my room to wake me up for school. And I guess that I had been laying on my side and my hair was like pulled up, because literally all I remember waking up to is her smacking me up out of my sleep and screaming at me because there was a hickey on my neck. She's like, I'm telling your mom whenever she gets home, your window's gonna be screwed shut. And I keep telling her it's not a hickey, so she calls my brother over. And he's like, yeah, that's definitely a hickey, because he likes to kiss her ass. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how my grandma almost got me grounded. So like I said, she's like, I'm telling your mom, and I keep telling her that it's not a hickey. And thankfully, my mom already went to work. She had work at 6 a.m. So I got on the bus, I go to school, and I'm talking to my friend and telling her about how I'm literally going to be crucified whenever I get home. And she told me about how her older sister was in like the same situation that I'm in now. So she texted her older sister asking what she did because she never got caught. And I was like, okay, well, if she used makeup, my mom's going to find out because she's not dumb. Well, apparently her older sister burnt herself with a curling iron. Yes, literally burnt herself, but she ended up getting away with it. So fast forward, I get home at around 3 o'clock and I sneak in through the back door so that way my grandma won't see that I came in the house, because she literally would have made me sit in the living room until my mom got home. So I go upstairs and I burn myself with a curling iron, which is not fun. Like for part 3. Part 3 about how my grandma almost got me grounded. So like I said, I snuck in through the back door so that way my grandma wouldn't see me, because if she saw me, she would have made me wait in the living room with her until my mom got home. So, you know, burnt myself with a curling iron and my mom gets home. And since I'm on the first floor, I can literally hear my grandma talking to my mom and my brother, of course. My grandma's like, yeah, she has hickeys all over her neck. Which is literally an exaggeration because there was one small one. So my mom calls me out to the living room. I go out and she's like, all right, show it to me. And I'm like, show you what? She's like, don't play stupid. Your grandma already told me the whole situation. And I was like, Mom, I literally burnt myself with a curling iron. And my grandma's like screaming and freaking out because I'm lying. She's like, you better tell your mother the truth right now. Da 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 da. So I show the burn to my mom. She looks at my grandma and she's like, so you're gonna tell me that's not a burn on her neck? And she was like, that's not how it looked this morning, blah, blah, blah. So I got away with it, but now my grandma literally stalks me to see if I'm doing anything wrong so she can tell my mom. Is a $40 foundation better than a $9 foundation? The two foundations that we have going up against each other are the She Glam Complexion Pro and the Airbrush Flawless Foundation. This at least looks like it's $30. So on this side, I'm going to do the She Glam foundation, and on the other side, I'm going to do the Charlotte Tilbury foundation. First things first, both of these foundations claim to have a matte finish that lasts all day, and it is supposed to feel like nothing is on your face. Also, both of these are supposed to be full coverage, and that's good to put to the test today because I do have a few blemishes. I am in literal shock right now. This is a dupe for the Charlotte Tilbury foundation. $9, $40, no beauty filter. They both look and feel the exact same way. Run. Do not walk, run. And everybody can run because there are 30 shades. Like, I'm sorry, you will never catch me spending $40 on a foundation ever again.
The asshole for wanting to expose my lying, cheating mother? A month ago, I borrowed my mom's phone and she had no idea, but I looked at all of her apps and found that she was cheating with multiple men. I'm 26 years old and my parents have now been married for 30 years. I actually got separated when I graduated from high school, but then they got back together a few years later. My mom has always been the one that wants to separate my dad, but he keeps wanting to get back together with her. My dad is actually in love with this woman. He adores her. He does everything for her. He's super affectionate with her, loves to take her out on dates, gives her so much of his time, and she still doesn't appreciate it. I've always been closer to my dad than my mom. My mom's always trying to find an excuse to go party with her friends, but now I know why. Like I said, I ended up borrowing her phone and she probably didn't expect me to go snooping. And honestly, it wasn't even my intention. I'm scrolling on her phone and I see the app Tinder. I nearly fell out of my seat. So I quickly scrolled through everything and started taking pictures. My mom was sending nudes to random men. Part 2 is up. I the asshole for wanting to expose my lying, cheating mother. That's when I saw that she was sending nudes to men on different apps. Not only was she on Tinder, she was also on Bumble and an app for older people. Mind you, my father is still in love with this woman. I managed to take pictures of everything on the apps. Here's the worst part. Start going through her messages and that's when I found that she has a boyfriend. At that point, I didn't know how long they'd been together. Now I know that she's been with him for 6 months. So every single time she goes on her weekend trips with her friends, she's actually with her boyfriend. And get this, she uses my dad's money to pay for everything. An entire week passed before I confronted her. First, I didn't know how to confront her, but I had to just do it. Every time I saw my dad, I would start to cry and he was worried about me. I didn't have the heart to tell my dad until I confronted my mom. I went up to her and I showed her all the receipts I had. Then she got pissed at me for looking through her phone. By the way, at this point, I'm still living with my parents. That's when she threatened to kick me out of the house if I told my dad anything. My own mother threatening me. Then she tried to smack me across the face, so I smacked her. Part 3 is up. Am I the asshole for wanting to expose my lying, cheating mother? After she slapped me, I slapped her back. And I slapped her so hard she actually fell on the floor. I instantly felt bad and tried to apologize. That's when she started to cry and I started to cry. I asked her to just be honest with me and tell me the truth. She told me that she wasn't in love with my dad anymore, but that she felt bad for him because he was still in love with her. And that she'd been dating this new guy for 6 months. She even confessed that she was addicted to going on dating apps and flirting with men. That's when I told her she needed to tell my dad. That she needed to stop using his money to take her boyfriend out. Then another confession. She had spent over $25,000 on hotels that she would book for her and her new boyfriend. And apparently this guy was broke. He couldn't pay for himself. She tried to negotiate with me. If I don't tell my dad, she'd break up with her boyfriend and stop using the apps. I mean, she's my mother and I don't want to cause her pain, but it's my dad. I ended up telling her that I wouldn't tell my dad. But 2 nights ago, my dad went on a work trip. My mom is so stupid, she actually snuck in her boyfriend through her window. I heard them doing the dirty all night. And now she's begging me again not to tell my dad. I'm planning on telling my dad tonight. I'll have to keep you guys updated. Give me advice.
Story time about how this girl and her boyfriend beat me up. So a little background information, I was in 11th grade and I was 17 years old. And in the summer, my friend and I went to go and watch fireworks for the 4th of July at this park. And most of the people there went to a completely different school. But we ended up meeting this group of guys and I was really vibing with the one guy who was there. He was super cute, super chill, and we got along great. And I just want to put this out there, I did not think to ask that he had a girlfriend because he was being super flirtatious and just really wasn't acting like he had a girlfriend. I literally just hate how we have to ask people if they're in relationships now because they don't want to be honest or loyal. And then we would look like the bad guys because they were dishonest. Anyway, so him and I start to hang out a lot and he really likes me. I really like him. And we went to this football game at his school and we ended up doing the nasty. After that, I'm in the bleachers with my friends and one of my friends tells me, yeah, he has a girlfriend. So she couldn't have told me this before we did the nasty. Anyways, like for part 2. About how this guy and his girlfriend literally beat me up. So like I said, him and I did the nasty at the football game and then I go onto the bleachers with my friends and she tells me that he has a girlfriend. But I'm not gonna lie, at this point we had already been talking for 2 months and I really didn't care because I liked him and I wasn't just gonna turn my feelings off. First of all, I do not owe that girl any loyalty. Number 2, we were already intimate with each other, so I don't know what could make this situation worse than it already was. I mean, I did confront him about it and he told me that he was going to break up with her for me. So I believed him. I was like, whatever, I'm just going to wait for him to break it off with her and I'm still going to talk to him. So eventually he literally made me wait for like 2 more months. So what did I do? I told his girlfriend everything. I'm not gonna lie, it's not even that I wanted to be a good person. It was literally just to spite him. It's like, yeah, your man wants to be with me. He don't want you. This is the text messages of him telling me that he was going to break up with you. That day he called me and he was like, hey, do you want to hang out? And I was shocked that he did not bring up anything that I said to his girlfriend. Like for part 3. Story time about how my sister sold my nudes. Yes, my own sister. So a little background information, I was in 12th grade and I was pretty popular. And my sister, on the other hand, she was in 9th grade. I'm not even saying this to boost my ego, but she was jealous of me and everybody could tell. Mainly because of the fact that she didn't have her high school glow up, she low-key still looked like a 6th grader. And there were very few guys who gave her attention, and some of the guys would even tell her that I was hotter than her. So that did not help the situation at all. Not like I even paid attention to any of these guys because I had a boyfriend. And my sister and I still shared a room even though our brothers got their own rooms. So she could literally go through my shit anytime she wanted. Well, since we shared a room and I'd never thought that she would sell my nudes, sometimes I would take these exposing pictures of myself while she was in the room. Well, she had this one friend named Jessica who also was weirdly obsessed with me. One night she was saying how funny it would be to sell someone's nudes, like part 2 about how my sister sold my nudes. So like I said, my sister had this friend, and the one night they were talking about how funny it would be to sell somebody's pics. We all laughed, joked about it, the conversation was over and done with. I thought that was it. Like, in all honesty, I thought it was one of those things where you guys make plans to do something, and then after the conversation, you never talk about it again, and you never actually do what you said you were going to do because it was so out of pocket. So my sister's friend slept over that night, and I woke up, went to school earlier because I have volunteer work to do, so my sister usually just takes the bus. Well, I accidentally left my computer at school, so I called my sister, asked her if she could grab it and bring it into school. Now, my computer is connected to my phone. Well, I guess they decided to be little creeps, and they went on my computer and they found my pictures, and they sent them to themselves. And since my phone and computer are hooked up, I was able to see that they sent the pictures to themselves. So I started blowing up her phone, but by first period, I had a bunch of people telling me that they were about to buy my pictures. My sister literally made an ad and put it on Snapchat. My boyfriend broke up.
I hid under my boyfriend's bed for 2 days and tried to poison him. Disclaimer is not my story time, it's not me on Instagram. My boyfriend and I have been dating for 3 months. And when we started dating, I got really jealous. He was my first boyfriend and I just didn't know how to control my feelings. You can say I'm pretty toxic. Part of the reason why I'm so insecure is because my boyfriend is probably one of the most popular guys in school. He's a basketball player and he's about to be drafted. So all the girls are constantly trying to hook up with him. And this drives me insane. Whenever we go out, girls are falling over trying to get to him. A few weeks ago, I heard a rumor that my boyfriend had hooked up with a girl. When I asked him about it, he got really defensive. He got so angry he punched a hole in my wall. And well, this made me start thinking, maybe he was cheating on me. So I basically started stalking him. And that's what I've been doing for the past 2 weeks. I'm even skipping class just to go wherever he's going. That's when I decided that I would hide in his room. I even put on a diaper. Part 2 is up. Put on the diaper so that I could hide under my boyfriend's bed without having to get out. Disclaimer is not my story time, was sending me on Instagram. I even took soft food with me so that he wouldn't hear me chewing. I knew he wouldn't be home, so I snuck into his dorm room. That's when I checked his entire room. I went through all of his clothes, even went through all of his dirty laundry just to smell them and make sure he didn't have anything in his pockets. Searched in between the mattresses and I found nothing. At this point, I was just looking for a sign of him having hooked up with somebody. I knew he was going to be coming home soon, so I snuck under the bed. It was pretty hidden underneath there because it's a huge bed. He came in by himself and started changing and went to take a shower. But he took his phone with him into the bathroom, so I didn't have a chance to check it. By the way, he thought that I had gone home to my parents' house, so he wasn't going to be hanging out with me at all. As he was getting ready, he put on cologne, and that's when I knew he was going to go look for another girl. A few hours later, he comes back and I'm still underneath the bed. And guess what? He's with a girl. The same girl I heard the rumor about. They come in there laughing and I can tell that they're clearly drunk. This girl goes to the bathroom and changes into lingerie. And then they started making out on the bed while I'm hiding underneath it. Part 3 is up. My boyfriend is making out with this girl on his bed. I'm hiding underneath it. Suddenly, she starts talking about how she's so happy they're finally a couple. How she's so happy he got away from me since I was such a crazy ex. Clearly, my boyfriend had been poisoning me against her. That's when I realized I really couldn't blame the girl. My boyfriend had clearly told her that he had broken up with me and that now he was with her. My plan was to initially get out of the bed and surprise them, but instead, I decided to wait. I managed to set up my phone while they were doing it on the bed, and I recorded the entire thing. After they finally finish, she leaves. My boyfriend goes to take a shower, and I finally come out underneath the bed. And I sit on his bed. And the look on this man's face when he comes out of the bathroom, priceless. But the best part is that I was filming the entire thing. At this point, I was still wearing the diapers because I had been under his bed for 2 days. I'm obviously looking rough. Then I tell him that I've been under his bed for the entire 2 days. He started calling me crazy and he tried to kick me out. Then I told him that he needs to break up with the girl and come back with me. If he didn't, I would send the video around to the entire school, including his coach, who is the girl's dad. I got him pretty good. So now he's still my boyfriend, although it's forced, to get back at him somehow. I'll keep you guys updated. Bye! Storytime about how I crashed my ex's wedding and managed to break them up a month later. I'm definitely toxic and vindictive. So when my boyfriend broke up with me, I knew what I had to do. He and I dated for 9 months. And you could say that I was a little overbearing. If you guys saw what this man looked like, maybe you'd understand. He's the type of guy that all the girls want to get with. Not only is he super handsome, but he's also very successful. And he's a great guy. Comes from a great family and he's really close to them. I, on the other hand, grew up in the foster system, so having a family was always my biggest dream. And when I met his family, they took me in right away. His mom and I essentially became best friends. His dad would take me out to dinners and lunch, and they basically adopted me as their daughter. Here's when things started going wrong. I was extremely jealous and I basically didn't let him do anything. Every time he wanted to go out with his friends, I would start a fight. Anytime he would bring up a female friend from the past, I would simply threaten to break up with him. Trust me, I recognized that what I was doing was wrong, but part of me just couldn't control myself. I was willing to do anything to make him stay with me. Eventually, he got really sick of me, started mentioning that he wanted to take a break. So that's when I told him that I was pregnant. Was I pregnant? Absolutely not. Part 2 is up. Story time about how I crashed my ex's wedding and managed to break them up a month later. The first time he threatened to break up with me, I told him that I was pregnant. It was obviously a lie and he knew it, so he basically still walked out on me. So in order to get his attention again, I decided to go to his family and tell them that I was pregnant. And they all believed me. His mom and dad even invited me to go live with them during the pregnancy. At first I said yes, but then I was like, hold on a second. How am I gonna fake a pregnancy? So to get myself out of that, I told him that I thought I was pregnant, but I actually wasn't. Yep, I'm starting my makeup all over again at this point. I had way too many layers on. During the time we were on a break, I basically followed him around everywhere just to make sure that he wasn't hooking up with any girls. Finally, 2 weeks later, he called me and told me that he missed me. We got back together, but the same thing happened. I was still jealous and controlling, but this time he was becoming more and more jealous. So much so that he started trying to control the way that I was dressing. Around this time, we started having huge fights. He would punch the wall right by my head. I would throw things at him, even threw a knife at him once. But part of me liked that he was so jealous and toxic. He was obsessed with me. And he broke up with me again, and 2 months later, he was engaged. And guess what? His family invited me to their engagement party. Part 3 is up. Story time about how I crashed my ex's wedding and managed to break them up a month later. That's when I get the invitation for his engagement party. At this point, it seems that my ex's parents thought we separated on good terms. So of course, I showed up to that engagement party. As soon as my ex saw me, he came straight to me and told me to leave. And I told him that I was welcome because his parents had invited me. He gave me a whole speech about how we were over and I needed to accept it. But of course, not one single part of me was willing to accept that. Then he called me an Uber, so I actually did end up leaving. When the wedding comes around, I was the first guest to show up. As soon as his parents saw me, they welcomed me. So I went and sat down at the parents' table. When my ex came out, he nearly fell over. Mind you, this is the first time I'm meeting his wife. I went up to her and told her that I was an ex of his. That's when she looked at me and said, "When did you guys date?" I said, "We dated for 9 months. And then she says that they had been dating at the same time. So then a whole bunch of drama goes down. She goes to him and starts slapping him. He starts to cry. And then his parents asked me to leave. So I did. The next month, I followed her everywhere. Finally told me to leave her alone and that they had already gotten a divorce. So my plan worked. Now I'm trying to figure out how to get back with my ex. What should I do?